All right, Mike Watkins, HurricaneTrack.com, HurricaneAnalytics.com with a quick update here at about 9:30 p.m. on now what is Tropical Storm Isaias. Winds are down to 60 miles per hour. The encounter with Andros Island created considerable weakening. There's a lot of dry air in the environment, as we talked about earlier if you watched the earlier update. But since then, there's been an interesting evolution to the storm, and something that we talked about during the update that we did before. So let's see, here we go. This is a time lapse of about the last 6 hours or so. So when I did about the last update, we had the storm was almost completely invisible in terms of the infrared imagery. You could see the center and satellite in the visible satellite, but you couldn't see it in infrared because it was basically not pushing up any thunderstorms. Since that time, it's made a comeback. It's made a considerable comeback in terms of its scope and span. But there's also an interesting evolution going on, and that is it is starting to, I think, the mid-level center has reestablished itself outward and further to the northeast of the low-level center because of the vertical shear that we talked about earlier. And I think over time that what that's going to do, it might tug the low-level center either northeast, away from Florida a little bit, or it may reform a center to the northeast away from Florida. But in either case, the storm is not over with yet. The idea here now, and let me go ahead and bring up the models here, and erase that guy right there. So the models have shifted a little to the north because of the change in initial position here, and also just in general. I think they're starting to sense that this is, that there might be some shear going on. So the center has moved a little bit. So if you remember a couple updates ago, I said that, let me do this here. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit on the Bahamas. Here's Bimini. We still have one model. Well, actually, it's a few. The extrapolated UCMET Canadian and the GFS ensemble mean still have the storm coming south of Bimini and making landfall somewhere in West Palm Beach County. So nothing showing a Fort Lauderdale landfall or anything north or south of Broward County now. And then the rest of the models, including the official forecast kind of projected out, also show it going just a little north of Bimini, and then we're seeing a landfall either in West Palm Beach or further north. So if we zoom out and look at the forecast tracks beyond there, these, for the most part, we're going to have a little bit of progress over land here, which will weaken the storm some, a little bit more, and then it should emerge out here into the southwest Atlantic, and then eventually again make landfall up here. The thing is, and you can see here as I'm kind of moving around, the NavGem actually shows an 80-knot hurricane, but other than that, we're looking at tropical storm intensity. The Hurricane Center is still forecasting a hurricane to make land, or I'm sorry, to re-strengthen to a hurricane, but then weaken again to a tropical storm before it makes landfall somewhere in this general area in the next few days. But the point is, the storm, although it's making a comeback, is not exactly super organized. If you look at the loop here, it starts to kind of expand. The CDO starts to expand, and you can see some outflows starting to develop again where we didn't have any before. We also have, and if we go to the mid-level water vapor, you can kind of see the evolution of what happened today down here again. So it essentially spreads out into this socket of dry air and starts to push an outflow out, but over time it can't sustain, it can't keep doing that. It's going to take more energy to push up the canopy than it is going to be able to maintain it, and then it'll go through these cycles over and over again because in general it's still embedded in this environment of vertical shear. And if you see, if you look at where the clouds are now relative to where they were even 6 or 7 hours ago, you had this kind of protective high pressure ridge over the top of the storm that's now been kind of pushed out to the east and northeast. So now where that ridge was once venting the system and still is kind of at the upper levels, it's now creating upper level wind shear that's tilting the vortex this way. So while we're still in a hurricane warning for Boca Raton North, at least the way it looks like now, and looking at the latest satellite imagery or the radar bands, the radar imagery from the Miami radar, the bands are kind of weakening as they get here because we're still on the southwest side of the storm, which is not really producing tropical storm force winds other than a few bands and gusts. But and the band we had come through earlier was really more of an arc cloud than a true band that was wrapped around the center of the storm. And it's possible that we might be able to evade some significant winds here, and it's possible we'll feel them north, or this tugging of the low-level center and kind of pulling it out to the north and east will keep it just off the Florida coast. Either way, Florida is going to be on the weak side of the storm unless it makes landfall. So, and that's something that we'll just need to continue to watch over the next several hours and into tonight. So certainly, if you're in the hurricane warning area, you should be prepared and ready to deal with tropical storm force wind and hurricane force winds. And we're still expecting anywhere from 1 to 3 feet of surge down on the Florida East Coast. And as you wrap around and go north, 3 to 5 feet of surge, and that's going to be the biggest concern, I think, as we move into the overnight hour. So hopefully we get to keep power and we move on. But as we kind of look at this, this is, I think, the first July since 2005 where we've had 2 hurricanes in the month of July that have emerged from the deep tropics. So even if this continues to kind of go up and down in intensity and stays a tropical storm as we move into the early part of next week, we're still had a very active July, which is extremely unusual. Normally, July is the most inactive of the 6 months in the hurricane season. So not ruling out that we'll still see 1 to 2 to several bands move through down here in southeast Florida and east central Florida. If the storm can manage to stay offshore, then that certainly would minimize the impact to everyone. If it comes in, obviously that's a different story. But right now, the strongest business of this storm is off to the right or to the east of it. So that's it. Is a really quick update. Mike Watkins again. This will probably be my last update on this system unless something else happens, at least over the weekend. And then as we get closer, potentially a landfall further north, if conditions warrant, I'll update again. All right. So Mike Watkins, HurricaneTrack.com, HurricaneAnalytics.com. Thanks for watching these updates. And we'll be back. I'll be back either with this storm or as the hurricane season continues here in 2020.